Okay, so picture this. 17th century France, the reign of King Louis XIV, all that fancy palace intrigue, and then, boom, you've got this dude locked away in prison, forced to wear an iron mask, not even a cool superhero mask, like a literal heavy metal mask 24/7. Talk about bad for your complexion, right? But here's the thing, nobody knows who he was, like, at all. His true identity was this huge secret, and the guards weren't allowed to speak to him. They even had to wear masks themselves sometimes, just in case he somehow got a glimpse of their faces. For over 2 centuries, historians and conspiracy theorists have been like, who is this masked man? Was he a political prisoner, a disgraced nobleman, an illegitimate son of the king? Okay, get this. One of the most popular theories is that he was Louis XIV's secret twin brother. I know, right? Imagine being the twin of the freaking king, but instead of living it up, you're stuck in a cell, your face covered in cold, hard iron. Talk about family drama. Another theory suggests he was a political prisoner, someone whose identity was so dangerous to the state that it had to be kept secret at all costs. Or maybe he was a disgraced nobleman, someone who had fallen out of favor with the king and was hidden away to avoid scandal. The mystery of the man in the iron mask continues to captivate us, blending history with a touch of legend. Now let's dive deeper into the life of this enigmatic figure. Imagine the daily torment of wearing that iron mask. It wasn't just a physical burden, it was a psychological one too. The mask was designed to be as uncomfortable as possible, with sharp edges and a heavy weight that pressed down on the wearer's face. Some accounts suggest that the mask was even bolted to the prisoner's head, making it impossible to remove without assistance. The guards who watched over him were sworn to secrecy, and they were often rotated to prevent any one of them from becoming too familiar with the prisoner. This level of secrecy was unprecedented, and it only added to the mystique surrounding the man in the iron mask. Over the years, many theories have been proposed about his identity. Some believe he was a high-ranking noble who had fallen out of favor with the king. Others think he was a political prisoner, someone whose very existence posed a threat to the stability of the kingdom. And then there's the theory that he was an illegitimate son of the king, hidden away to prevent any claims to the throne. The most sensational theory, of course, is that he was the king's secret twin brother, a rival for power who had to be kept out of the public eye. Imagine the psychological torment of knowing you were the twin of the most powerful man in the country, yet you were condemned to a life of obscurity and suffering. The political intrigue of the time was intense, and the existence of a secret twin would have been a scandal of epic proportions. Whether he was a disgraced nobleman, a political prisoner, or a secret royal, the man in the iron mask remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. His story has inspired countless books, movies, and theories, each one adding a new layer to the legend. As we continue to uncover new information, the true identity of the man in the iron mask may one day be revealed. Until then, he remains a symbol of the dark and mysterious side of history. To understand the context, we need to delve into the political climate of 17th century France. King Louis XIV, also known as the Sun King, ruled with absolute power. His reign was marked by opulence but also by strict control over the nobility and the state. The court was a hotbed of intrigue, with nobles constantly vying for the king's favor. In such an environment, secrets and scandals were commonplace. The Bastille, where the man in the iron mask was held, was not just a prison but a symbol of the king's absolute power. It was a place where political prisoners, dissidents, and those who had fallen out of favor were kept in harsh conditions. The iron mask itself was a tool of dehumanization, designed to strip the prisoner of his identity and dignity. Theories about the man's identity have ranged from the plausible to the fantastical. Some suggest he was a high-ranking noble involved in a failed coup. Others believe he was a foreign spy, captured and hidden away to prevent diplomatic fallout. The idea of a secret twin brother, while sensational, speaks to the deep-seated fears and rivalries within the royal family. Imagine the psychological torment of knowing you were the twin of the most powerful man in the country, yet you were condemned to a life of obscurity and suffering. The political intrigue of the time was intense, and the existence of a secret twin would have been a scandal of epic proportions. Whether he was a disgraced nobleman, a political prisoner, or a secret royal, the man in the iron mask remains one of history's most enduring mysteries. Alright, so you know how much I hate talking about anything to do with kids being hurt, but this story, This story is one you guys need to hear. It's about a woman named Georgia Tann, and for decades she ran a horrific baby trafficking operation right here in America in broad daylight. Like, this woman was pure evil. See, Georgia ran an adoption agency in Memphis, Tennessee called the Tennessee Children's Home Society. On the surface it seemed legit, even praised. Wealthy couples, desperate for a child, flocked to her. But behind those doors, it was a nightmare. This wasn't some small-time operation, you guys. We're talking about over 5,000 children stolen from their families, their identities erased, their lives forever changed. Georgia Tann was a monster preying on the most vulnerable, and the worst part, she got away with it for years. This story is it's heartbreaking, it's infuriating, but it's important, and I need you guys to stick with me, okay? Because the more we know about these dark parts of history, the better we can fight to make sure they never happen again. Georgia Tann's reign of terror finally came to an end in 1950 when an investigation exposed her crimes. The investigation revealed the extent of her atrocities, and she was condemned by the public and authorities alike. Families who had lost their children were devastated, and the nation was in shock. The Tennessee Children's Home Society was shut down, and reforms were put in place to prevent such horrors from happening again. Georgia Tann died of cancer in 1950, just days before she could be brought to justice. Her death meant she never faced the full consequences of her actions, leaving many to feel a sense of unresolved justice. But her story serves as a grim reminder of the importance of vigilance and the need to protect the most vulnerable among us. We must remember these dark chapters of history to ensure they are never repeated. And together we can work towards a future where every child is safe and loved. Thank you for listening, and let's continue to fight for a better world. Okay, so picture this. The 1930s Manchuria, a land caught in the throes of geopolitical tension where the Japanese Empire was expanding its influence. The streets were bustling with life, but beneath the surface something sinister was brewing. Japan sets up this super-secret facility called Unit 731. Officially, it was known as the Epidemic Prevention and Water Purification Department of the Kwantung Army. But the reality was far more horrifying. They say it's for epidemic prevention and water purification research, but that's a big fat lie. The propaganda was just a cover for the gruesome activities that took place within its walls. This place was a house of horrors, a playground for the most twisted scientific minds Japan could find. Scientists and doctors who were supposed to save lives instead turned into harbingers of death. And what went on behind those walls would make you sick to your stomach. The facility was shrouded in secrecy, with high walls and barbed wire keeping the outside world at bay. We're talking about human experimentation on a scale that's hard to even imagine. The experiments were brutal, inhumane, and utterly devoid of any ethical considerations. And the worst part? Most of the victims were Chinese civilians, prisoners of war, innocent people who were subjected to unimaginable suffering. These people were treated like lab rats, their lives considered completely disposable. They were subjected to vivisections, biological warfare experiments, and other forms of torture. It's the kind of stuff that keeps you up at night, wondering how anyone could do such things to another human being. The sheer cruelty and disregard for human life are beyond comprehension. The New York Times published a piece in 1995 that interviewed participants in the unit. No members of the unit were tried for their crimes, as the United States granted them immunity in exchange for giving them the data and agreeing to work on the United States on biological weapons research. Here are a few excerpts. The fellow knew that it was over for him, and so he didn't struggle when they led him into the room and tied him down, recalled the 72-year-old farmer, then a medical assistant in a Japanese army unit in China in World War II. But when I picked up the scalpel, that's when he began screaming. I cut him open from the chest to the stomach, and he screamed terribly, and his face was all twisted in agony. He made this unimaginable sound, he was screaming so horribly. But then, finally he stopped. This was all in a day's work for the surgeons, but it really left an impression on me because it was my first time. Takeo Wano, a 71-year-old former medical worker in Unit 731, who now lives here in the northern Japanese city of Morioka, said he once saw a 6-foot-high glass jar in which a Western man was pickled in formaldehyde. The man had been cut into 2 pieces vertically, and Mr. Wano guesses that he was Russian because there were many Russians then living in the area. The cost of this scientific breakthrough was borne by those seized for medical experiments. They were taken outside in freezing weather and left with exposed arms, periodically drenched with water, until a guard decided that frostbite had set in. Testimony from a Japanese officer said this was determined after the frozen arms, when struck with a short stick, emitted a sound resembling that which a board gives when it is struck. A booklet just published in Japan after a major exhibition about Unit 731 shows how doctors even experimented on a 3-day-old baby, measuring the temperature with a needle stuck inside the infant's middle finger. After the war, some of the perpetrators were brought to justice, but many escaped punishment. The Tokyo trials and other war crime tribunals tried to hold them accountable, but the full extent of their crimes was often downplayed. Declassified documents and testimonies have since revealed the true horror of Unit 731. The survivors' stories and the evidence left behind paint a chilling picture of what went on in that secret base. Today, memorials and museums stand as a testament to the victims of Unit 731. They serve as a reminder of the atrocities committed and the resilience of those who suffered. Educational programs and historical exhibitions continue to educate people about the horrors of Unit 731. It's a crucial part of ensuring that such dark chapters are never forgotten. The mastermind behind Unit 731 was Shiro Ishii, a microbiologist and the head of the unit. Under his command, the facility conducted some of the most heinous experiments in history. The experiments included vivisections without anesthesia, where prisoners had their organs removed to study the effects of disease. Frostbite experiments involved exposing prisoners to extreme cold to study the effects on the human body. They also developed biological weapons, such as plague-infected fleas, which were later used in attacks on Chinese cities. The impact of these experiments was devastating, leading to countless deaths and suffering. Researchers and historians continue to uncover the full extent of Unit 731's atrocities. Their work is crucial in ensuring that the victims' stories are told and that such horrors are never repeated. The legacy of Unit 731 serves as a stark reminder of the depths of human cruelty, but also of the importance of global peace and cooperation. We must strive to build a world where such atrocities are never repeated. Okay guys, let's talk about the Stanford Prison Experiment. This is one of the most infamous psychological studies ever conducted, and for good reason. It's a tale of how quickly things can go wrong when you put people in positions of power and strip others of their identities. You know, the one where they took a bunch of college students, put them in a fake prison, and things got way out of hand. Yeah, that one. It's a story that has been told and retold, analyzed and critiqued, but it never ceases to shock and fascinate. It's like something straight out of a psychological thriller, but it actually happened. Imagine signing up for a study thinking it's just a bit of role-playing and then finding yourself in a situation that feels all too real, too intense, and too disturbing. So in 1971, this psychologist named Philip Zimbardo wanted to study how people behave in positions of power. Sounds innocent enough, right? Zimbardo was curious about the dynamics of authority and submission, and he thought a simulated prison environment would be the perfect setting to explore these themes. Well, his method was to create a mock prison in the basement of Stanford University. He transformed a quiet academic space into a place of confinement and control, complete with cells, barred doors, and a solitary confinement area. It was an eerie transformation, turning a place of learning into a place of punishment. He recruited a group of male students, randomly assigned them to be either guards or prisoners, and then just let them loose. These were ordinary young men, with no special training or predisposition for the roles they were about to play. They were just college students looking to make a little extra money and maybe learn something interesting along the way. Now, here's where things start to get really messed up. The guards were given authority and the prisoners were stripped of theirs. It was a recipe for disaster, but no one could have predicted just how quickly and how severely things would deteriorate. Zimbardo gave the guards uniforms, sunglasses to hide their eyes, and basically told them to maintain order however they saw fit. The sunglasses were a particularly dehumanizing touch, creating a barrier between the guards and the prisoners, making it easier for the guards to see the prisoners as less than human. The prisoners, on the other hand, were stripped of their identities, given numbers instead of names, and basically treated like criminals. And guess what? It didn't take long for the experiment to spiral out of control. The prisoners began to feel the weight of their new identities, and the guards began to wield their power with increasing cruelty. It didn't take long for the experiment to spiral out of control. The line between role-playing and reality blurred, and the participants began to lose themselves in their assigned roles. The guards became more sadistic, and the prisoners more submissive and desperate. The guards, some of whom were totally normal, well-adjusted guys before this, became increasingly authoritarian and abusive. They started to see the prisoners not as their peers, but as actual criminals who needed to be controlled and punished. They started humiliating the prisoners, depriving them of sleep, and even forcing them to do physical labor. The prisoners were made to feel powerless and insignificant, their spirits broken by the relentless abuse. It was like they got so caught up in their roles that they forgot these were their classmates, their peers. The guards' behavior became more and more extreme as they tested the limits of their power and the prisoners' endurance. They became consumed by the power they had been given. The experiment, which was supposed to last 2 weeks, had to be terminated after just 6 days because of the extreme psychological distress it was causing. The participants were left to grapple with the aftermath of their actions, and the world was left to ponder the dark side of human nature. The Stanford prison experiment remains a powerful reminder of how easily ordinary people can be led to commit extraordinary acts of cruelty when placed in certain situations. It challenges us to think about the nature of authority, the fragility of our moral compasses, and the importance of ethical guidelines in psychological research. Philip Zimbardo himself has spent much of his career reflecting on the implications of the experiment. He has spoken extensively about the lessons learned and the ethical boundaries that were crossed. The experiment has been criticized for its lack of oversight and the psychological harm it caused, but it has also been praised for its insights into human behavior. In the years since the Stanford prison experiment, the field of psychology has made significant strides in establishing ethical guidelines to protect participants. Institutional review boards, informed consent, and debriefing procedures are now standard practice, ensuring that the welfare of participants is prioritized. Okay, you guys, this next one is straight out of a spy movie, but it's real life, and it's never been solved. Imagine the intrigue, the suspense, the unanswered questions. It's a mystery that has baffled experts and amateurs alike for decades. Picture this. It's 1948, December 1st, Somerton Beach, Australia. The sun is shining, the waves are gently lapping at the shore, and people are enjoying a typical day at the beach. Families are picnicking, children are building sandcastles, and the atmosphere is one of relaxation and joy. Amidst all this normalcy, something sinister lurks. A man is found dead on the beach, disrupting the serene scene with an air of mystery and foreboding. He's found dead on the beach, just lying there, fully dressed. Imagine the shock of the first person who stumbled upon him. A lifeless body, dressed impeccably, lying on the sand as if he had just decided to take a nap and never woke up. No wallet, no ID, nothing. It's as if he wanted to remain anonymous, or someone wanted him to be. The absence of identification adds another layer to the enigma. Who was he? Why was he there? And why did he have no means of identification on him? Who was this guy? He was well-dressed, like, really well-dressed for the time. His attire suggested he was someone of importance, or at least someone who cared about his appearance. A suit, a tie, polished shoes. He looked like he could have been heading to a business meeting or a formal event. But why would such a well-dressed man end up dead on a beach with no identification? But here's the thing. The tags on his clothes? Gone. Every single one of them meticulously removed. It's as if someone wanted to erase any trace of where his clothes came from, making it even harder to identify him. The level of detail and care taken to remove the tags suggests a deliberate attempt to obscure his identity. It raises questions about who he was and why someone would go to such lengths to keep him anonymous. A month later, a suitcase was uncovered in the cloakroom of the Adelaide railway station. It had been checked in the day before the Somerton man's body was discovered, and police suspected it belonged to him. Inside was an odd assortment of items, including clothes that also had their labels removed, and a waxed thread not sold in Australia, the same kind used to repair the unidentified man's trousers. The names Keane and Keane were written on several items. Clothes believed to have belonged to the Somerton man. But who was Keane? Was it his real name or another layer of the mystery? The Somerton man mystery is also known as the Tamam Shud case. Those Persian words, meaning "it is finished," are from the poetry book The Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam. Months after the Somerton man died, a pathologist re-examining his body found a scrap of paper in the man's pocket bearing the words, "Tamam Shud." Shortly after the first inquest concluded, police appealed to the public to help find the book from which the scrap had been torn, and a businessman came forward with a matching copy. The book had been found apparently discarded in the back of his car around the same time as, and close to where, the Somerton man's body was found. Once the book was handed in, it revealed further clues. In the back of the book there was a telephone number and a sequence of letters, faintly indented. The letters are perhaps the most intriguing part of the whole mystery. They have been interpreted by some as a code and have led to speculation the Somerton man was a Cold War spy, but efforts to decipher their meaning, or determine whether they have one, have proved fruitless. The phone number in the back of the book was revealed to belong to a woman called Jessica Thompson, who also went by the names Joe and Jestin. She lived just hundreds of meters from where the Somerton man's body was found, but when she spoke to police in July 1949, she denied knowing him. The story of the Somerton man is a roller coaster of intrigue, mystery, and unanswered questions. It's a case that continues to captivate and baffle, leaving us all wondering if we'll ever know the truth. Alright, you guys, as a special treat for sticking with me this long, I've got a bonus story for you. This one is a chilling tale that will send shivers down your spine. It's a story that has been whispered in the dark corners of Marrakesh for decades, a tale of terror that has left an indelible mark on the city's history. This one's not for the faint of heart, so if you're squeamish, you might want to skip ahead. But if you're brave enough to continue, prepare yourself for a journey into the macabre. This is the story of Haj Mohammed Mesfewi, the serial killer who terrorized Marrakesh in the 1950s. His name still evokes fear and dread among those who remember the dark days when he roamed the streets. A killer stalks the Medina, preying on unsuspecting women. The fear is palpable, a constant undercurrent that taints the lively atmosphere. His name was Haj Mohammed Mesfewi, and he was a respected shopkeeper, a seemingly ordinary man leading a double life. By day, he was a pillar of the community, a man who was trusted and admired. For years, Mesfewi operated with impunity, luring women, often young and vulnerable, to their deaths. His victims were drawn to him by his promises and his seemingly kind nature. Mesfewi's methods were as chilling as they were effective. He would follow his victims, studying their routines, learning their vulnerabilities. When the moment was right, he would strike, his actions swift and brutal. The authorities were baffled. Women were disappearing without a trace, and the fear in the community grew with each passing day. The police were under immense pressure to solve the case, but Mesfewi was always one step ahead. His victims were often lured with promises of work or assistance. Mesfewi knew how to exploit their hopes and dreams, turning their aspirations into a deadly trap. Many of the women who disappeared were last seen entering his shop. It was a place that should have been safe, a place of business and community, but for Mesfewi, it was the perfect hunting ground. Once inside, the women were at his mercy. Mesfewi's true nature would reveal itself, and the terror would begin. The shop, once a place of commerce, became a chamber of horrors. The breakthrough in the case came when a brave woman managed to escape. Her testimony provided the police with the crucial information they needed to finally apprehend Mesfewi. The arrest of Haj Mohammed Mesfewi sent shockwaves through Marrakesh. The community was stunned to learn that the respected shopkeeper was the monster who had been terrorizing them. Mesfewi's trial was a spectacle, drawing crowds from all over. The evidence against him was overwhelming, and the stories of his victims were heartbreaking. The courtroom was filled with a mix of anger, sorrow, and relief. To satisfy the anger of the crowd, Mesfewi was condemned to be crucified, but the European ambassadors present in the country protested against this method of execution, deemed barbaric. The sentence is changed to hanging, but it is not applied. Finally, Mesfewi was tortured and flogged in public for 2 months, each day ending with 10 blows with a toothed stick. At the end of this torture, he was walled up alive and died after 2 days. The St. John's Sun of September 8, 1906 states that he uttered many cries during his 2 days of agony. Well, there you have it, guys. 5 dark historical events that you probably didn't learn in school. From the mystery of the Somerton Man to the horrors of Unit 731, these stories remind us that the past is full of secrets, some of them darker than we could ever imagine. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I hope you found this video as fascinating and disturbing as I did. If you did, Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my future videos. Your support really helps me to keep making the content you love. And remember, the world is a strange and mysterious place, so stay curious, keep exploring, but be careful out there. You never know what you might find lurking in the shadows. Until next time, stay spooky.